This is TWiT.
Matthew Panzarino, who is a TechCrunch reporter, but also, I think, beloved by Apple, got a scoop that really basically is a PR release from Apple saying Apple Maps is going to be so great. It's going to be so good. They're rebuilding Maps. For a long time, Maps used other companies' map data, TomTom and others. Apple is, for the first time, going to be using first-party data gathered by, and this, I thought this was interesting, iPhones, like you and me. But it's a privacy-first methodology. And its own fleet of cars, kind of like Google's Street View cars. The new product will launch for the in the San Francisco and the Bay Area soon, I guess, with the iOS 12 beta. I haven't tried it yet, and we'll cover Northern California by fall. But this is a long piece on the remaking of Apple Maps, which sounds to me almost like the Apple apology tour for the Mac Pro, which Matthew was also a part of.
Well, Leo, it makes a lot of sense because, you know, Apple increasingly is trying to own its own data. It's trying to own its all of the components for the iPhone, and I think that it knows the value in mapping, and so while it may be a press release, I think it's a really interesting press release and one that kind of shows that what they want to do is maintain a lot of control over I mean, that's a really valuable thing to have, that kind of location data, and they're finally making use in the same way Android does this with Google Maps. They use that data from Android in the same way. So I think it's a smart move by Apple, and hopefully it will make Maps better. I put a radio in my car that uses CarPlay, and I've started using Apple Maps exclusively when I'm in my car just to see how good it is. And it's on a par in terms of directions in the places I go with Google Maps. So I think it has gotten better, and hopefully this will help too. Yeah,
I live in the Bay Area, so it's always going to be good here. So I don't know, how.
I think in big urban areas it is. The kind of places where I've seen it fall down is if I'm out in the boonies, out around Brenham or LaGrange or out there. It's it doesn't do as well there. But if you're in a city, it's usually excellent.
Has anyone tied this back to their ambitions to have their own self-driving car tech?
Yes.
And that they found out that their maps weren't good enough.
That's right.
That's probably a good point.
Matthew does. He mentions it specifically. Yeah. Yeah. You can't have a self-driving car unless you have maps. You got to get that data.
And their privacy first said that what they're doing is they're not looking at your destination and where you're coming from, but they're not telling you how they're determining those. Like, is it 5 feet from the end point to the beginning point, or is it 5%?
This is what Eddie Q told Panzarino. We specifically don't collect data even from point A to point B. We collect data when we do it in an I don't know. I can't even read this with a straight face. It makes no sense. We collect data when we do it in an anonymous fashion, but we don't collect data. But when we do it in an anonymous fashion in subsections of the whole. But we don't collect data, so we couldn't even say there's a person that went from point A to point B. We're collecting segments of it. I don't know.
But how thick are those red parts in that chart?
Yeah.
What does that mean? What does this mean?
Well,
it doesn't. It's like
also I can appreciate what they're saying for privacy reasons, and I get that that's like a sales pitch, and for some people it's a value add. But the reason that Google Maps has been good for so long, and I kind of went on a mini Twitter kind of not rant, but kind of had a thread about it, was because Google's been doing this for a decade, right? Like they were in
and they don't hide it, by the way. You can look at your Google location information and see everywhere you've been for years.
Yes. But what I'm saying, though, is that part of the reason Google is so good is not just that they had the cars going around. They had for many, many years, they closed it a number of years ago, but they had an open map maker data where anyone could kind of, plot their own areas. And that was hugely beneficial in areas like parts of the world that had never had updated mapping and where the existing third-party data didn't exist. So you had people who would update things automatically. And then they started gathering really early on, even before the iPhone. And I think actually from the iPhone, I think that was one of the reasons why Apple dropped Google Maps from the default thing, was that they were grabbing information from users and able to kind of build that into their whole systems. And so that's one of the reasons why, frankly, it's so much better, but you're right. There is a kind of a lot of fuzziness of, okay, well, how much data are you collecting? And the part of me is like, well, I appreciate that you're not collecting my data, or so you claim. But if you're collecting part of it, and if this is all going to be anonymized, I'd really rather not be stuck on an access road where we have to go and reverse a mile because the Apple Maps directions to get to the lake took us through this place where, yes, we did actually, this is a true story. This happened last 4th of July. We had to go and reverse a mile on like a back road kind of thing because it took us a very wrong route. And now I don't know, Google wasn't much better, but it was better. And this is kind of like the mountains kind of, part of, Washington State, which isn't well mapped by any of these companies, but the Apple Maps was particularly egregious in that case.